Before I start, can I ask you all a question? Quick show of hands. How many of you were ever told there is one correct path to success? School, university, career. Now keep your hand up if that path worked out exactly as you planned. That's the way it normally goes. That moment right there, that's where this talk begins. You see, this isn't really a talk about artificial intelligence. It's a talk about what happens when human capability gets amplified. For most of history, opportunity is dependent on access. Access to credentials, network, capital, and mentorship. But for the first time, we're beginning to see the tools that amplify individuals regardless of where they came from. And I know this personally, because my path has never looked like the one that people describe when they talk about success. For most of my early life, my roadmap was rugby. Everything I worked towards pointing in that direction. Till one split second, just like that, the entire game plan collapsed. One moment, one injury, I spent the next 6 months unable to walk, thinking what was I going to do next. When I lost rugby, I lost my entire roadmap. But I did have one thing, a phone and a laptop. And what I didn't realise then was people like me were about to gain access to something incredibly powerful. So I did what I could with what I had and started my first business. No investors, no credentials, just some curiosity and access. And over the 8 years since, I've been involved in a number of startups across health, wellness and marketing, with particular interest to help young entrepreneurs find their footing, especially ones who aren't from a traditional academic background. Because I understand that world. Heavily dyslexic, I was diagnosed when I was 10 years old. School was always a constant struggle. Sport was where I always felt most capable. And when I lost that, I had to find a different type of capability altogether. Now I've walked into rooms feeling like the least intelligent person there more times than I can count. But I've come to think of it, it's not a bad place to be because it forces you to develop a different type of capability altogether. Capability is applied thinking, it's clarity under pressure. It's the willingness to move when others are still weighing up their options. You can be the least qualified person in the room and still be the most capable. Those two things aren't the same. Starting something used to mean guessing, trying, learning and failing in front of everyone and sometimes not finding the resolve to try again. I've been one of those people. I made mistakes I believed in and sometimes paid a price that looking back didn't always need to be that high. Historically, only around 1 in 10 startups survive long term. Can you believe that? Not because founders lack ideas or determination, but because early mistakes compound. When you already feel like you're playing catch up, every mistake sits heavier than it should. So what's changed is not intelligence, what's changed is access to support at the exact moment that it matters the most. AI tools allow you to interrogate an idea before you act on it, to stress test an assumption before you commit to it, and to highlight blind spots you never knew you had. I run a marketing agency. We don't just use these tools internally, we build them into our client systems, generating leads, automating outreach, finding efficiencies for them. A few years ago, that was manual reporting and outreach built on guesswork. Now, research takes minutes, not days. Outreach is built on analysis, not hope. Instead of scripting drafts and formatting documents, I spend my time actually thinking. The output got better, and we got there faster. Because with AI, speed doesn't have to mean sloppiness. You can execute with urgency and refine with intelligence. For a long time, those felt like opposing forces. Now, they no longer have to be. So what's left for the human if the support is that strong? It's a great question, it deserves a very direct answer. I sometimes say AI doesn't stand for artificial intelligence. It stands for amplified individual. Because when used correctly, it turns your volume up and turns the noise down everywhere else. These tools don't have vision, they don't have taste, they don't have the judgment that comes from lived experience. From picking yourself back up when you're staring at that ceiling, that still remains human. The tool is the nail, the human is the hammer. Direction of force still comes from the person holding it. Now some of you may recognise the man up on screen behind me now. There he is. He's a slightly older, but considerably better looking version of me, and he definitely told me to say that. That's my dad. And he's without question the hardest working person I know. He's lived through some of the most significant shifts in modern history. The rise of the internet, the smartphone putting a computer in everyone's pocket. And he's even become something of a self-proclaimed Bitcoin expert, which I'll leave him to elaborate on at the bar after. Go rack his brains about that. When I first showed him AI, I always remember what he said to me. Son, I wish I had this in 1988. Not because he wanted shortcuts and not because he wanted to do less, but because he knew how many times he had to test ideas the hard way, how many decisions he had to make alone, and how many times he didn't have anyone else backing him in his corner, apart from my mum, occasionally. She told me to say that. And it got me thinking, imagine if you had these tools, imagine what he would have built. The challenges that he faced, uncertainty, lack of access, lack of support, those aren't unique to any one era. They're the same challenges every generation faces when they're trying to build something from nothing. This isn't a story about age or background or what decade you happen to grow up in. There's a few in here as well, see around. It's a human story, and it belongs to all of us. Opportunity widens when the tools don't ask where you went to school, they don't notice your accent, and they don't ask to see your credentials. That doesn't replace resilience of picking yourself back up when things go wrong, but it does remove unnecessary friction. And unnecessary friction is always weighed heaviest on the people who can afford it the least. Now, we aren't watching intelligence being replaced, but we are watching individuals like me and like you be amplified. And the question is no longer whether these tools will shape the future. The question is, what will you build with them? Thank you.